This is St. Pete X, affectionately known as SPX. SPX brings you St. Pete's brightest business people, civic leaders, and citizens who share their insight and expertise as well as their love of our great city. SPX is presented by the St. Petersburg Group. Head to stpete.co to check out more episodes, and by St. Pete's most effective marketing agency, Big C. Browse to bigc.co to see their work. Now enjoy the conversation. Hey, I'm here with Kevin Hohl from HD Interactive. Kevin is a longtime resident of St. Pete and a technology thought leader. Today we're going to talk about how soon it's going to be until we're in space and mating with other species and aliens and all the things that he knows that he may decide to share with us or he may not decide to share with us.
Well, thank you. That's a wonderful introduction. And we can actually go into space right now, right in this room.
Is this the blue pill or the red pill?
Exactly. Just by putting on a set of VR goggles. In fact, just last week, I tried a new virtual reality experience for the HTC Vive that it's a space station. So you can experience weightlessness, you can look at the Earth, and you're traveling at, 64,000 miles an hour over space.
Is the weightlessness inducement all contained in the glasses, or do you have to do some other things?
No, it's the HTC Vive. It's a virtual reality headset, and you have two controllers that are your hands, and you really don't see your body, but you can see your hands, and you can push and pull yourself all through the space station. So if you're the type of person that wants to experience weightlessness, this is a way, and quite frankly, probably after about 6 minutes, I got pretty dizzy on it.
So just seeing is enough to make you feel weightless, even if you're not.
We've learned, and I've learned the hard way, that when the virtual body moves and the physical body is stationary, that's where there's a propensity for people to become queasy or kind of lose their balance and things. It just so happens that I'm probably about one of the most sensitive people out there.
In general, but...
Yes, in general and in VR. And in the name of science and R&D, I've probably gotten myself physically sick, more than 30 times. It's a new learning lesson every single day. It really is.
So what's the weirdest virtual reality thing that you're comfortable talking about that you've done?
That we've done? Well...
Or even that you've seen?
One that I think is the most impactful. It's weird, it's scary, and it's very, very, very simple. It's a game or experience called Richie's Plank. The graphics are okay. It's not the most beautiful thing, but you go in an elevator and you hit the virtual button and it just brings you 40 stories in the air and the doors open and there's a plank and that's it. It's just about the most frightening thing that I ever experienced. And in fact, I couldn't even walk out on the plank the very first time that I did it. It took me a few times and then I actually cheated because, you can fall off the plank and basically fall all the way down. I kind of kept one eye out of the VR headset and had a view of at least my foot. So I felt safe, but I was frankly too afraid to do it. Recently, we've been doing more one-on-one demos and just showing it to technology leaders and interested parties and the dean of this college and the head of the Chamber of Commerce. It was interesting to see who would take a step and who wouldn't. I really wasn't forceful with anybody, but I tried to be encouraging to get the person to walk out on the plank if they felt intimidated by the height, because obviously it's really scary if you're afraid of heights. It was pretty great. Almost everybody eventually walked out on the plank and experienced it, kind of with my help and encouragement along the way. But there is certainly a large amount of people that just wouldn't do it.
There's that myth that if you die in your dreams, is that true for VR too?
I hope not, because I've died so many times in VR, it's probably too many to count. But for gaming, it's amazing. The kind of work we're doing right now is just a lot of exploratory and R&D. We're working with a tool for data visualization, and we're not even really sure how far we're going to go with it or where it's going to lead to. So in some ways, we really do feel like pioneers in this because somebody had to figure out pie charts and graph charts, and they're really important to understand data. Well, now you can walk through the data. You can be immersed in it. So we're just exploring new ways on how that could happen and what the experience would be and what use cases there are for it. So it's a lot of fun.
So I feel like technically that your team can probably do about anything. So half the time it feels like it might be a solution looking for a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're builders. We're builders just like any other builder in the world. We just do it with code. And we have craftsmen and journeymen with specialties, people that model 3D elements, people that animate, people that draw, people that work with big databases, and people that write with code. I mean, code is sticks and stones. I guess that's a good way to put it. We're constantly looking to solve the next problem. Most of our work comes from our clients requesting us, but at the same time, we like to devote a certain amount of our time as a company into R&D, into new technologies. And right now, virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality are three things that we're really excited for. The CEO of our company, Sean Carey, the founder of HG Interactive, was actually out first week in June at the Apple Developer Conference. And we are really excited that Apple has provided tools now for developers like us for augmented reality. It'll be coming probably, in the next year or two. I think we'll see a real rise in all kinds of ways that augmented reality can be used on the telephone as well as the tablet. So just partnering and giving developers those tools is a very, very exciting thing. And I think as far as things to look for in the near future, augmented reality is going to be a very, very, very popular thing. We're already tooling around with it and getting the developer kits and spending some time playing with the sample code that they give us and getting those things working.
So for people who may not be familiar with the space, can you sort of describe augmented reality and how it works?
Sure. So augmented reality by definition is any digital element that interacts with the real world. So a very simple, basic example that we've both seen a million times is the first down marker on a football game when you watch TV. So there's a painted yellow line in there. Nowadays, we've got all kinds of graphics that come up and even advertisements that show up on the field, especially in soccer and World League and things like that, that aren't actually there. You don't even know the difference. So that's by definition what augmented reality means. Quite literally, augmented reality with something that is digital. So the early stages of it were webcam and something called a marker. So it was a black and white thing. You give it code, and when you show the webcam the code, it was a bit of a fad. There were some video games like that. There was augmented reality birthday cards and greeting cards. And we augmented our business card, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago, just to test it out. At that time, that was the Qualcomm Vuforia SDK. So that was the software development kit for that. And I think maybe within a week or so, we already had many of the assets laying around, if you will. So we put it together, and it's always fun to show. Kind of shows our creativity as a company, and I get to say I have the coolest business card. But, after that, it was really a parlor trick. And so it really wasn't widely adopted.
Would you put that into even a lesser version of the QR code?
Yeah, or even a fancier version of the QR code, because it would look for an image. So originally when it came out, we were hoping to maybe use it in, say, an art museum, that you could just hold your phone
That's
up to it.
That's a great idea.
The technology really wasn't there, and could probably talk about that thing for a while. But in the end, it wasn't really a feasible thing with the technology itself. And then the budgets needed to create stuff like that. It wasn't a great fit. But Pokemon Go was huge. Your kids still playing Pokemon Go?
We never did Go. We're still doing the cards and the old school things, yeah. And it's a full-on addiction.
It's still happening. So that is another version of augmented reality, because it knows literally geolocated where you are. So it's interacting with the real world with, again, digital content in some way.
How do they monetize that?
I think with in-app purchases, I think there is a free version. I escaped that one. There were too many friends and family and too many opportunities for my 5-year-old daughter to play it that we didn't need it in the house.
Our team got into it, our Big C team, and I think we probably lost solid 500 man hours to people out there doing that. So I'm going to send an invoice to Nintendo.
Yeah. It's also part of the experience and also part of learning. And aren't we lucky that sometimes our jobs are to play video games? I certainly know that I am, and I never thought that 20 years ago this is what I'd be doing.
And you guys, you're on the forefront of technology. You've also kind of been on the forefront of doing business. You've had a distributed team now for 1 million years, and it's given you a really nice life. And, obviously there's some drawbacks to not having an office, but it seems like you guys have thrived. And
yeah, at the end of the day, it's overhead that was really never important, as the way that we saw it. And many companies operate and need that. Many development teams feel like they need to be in the same space, and we've always been able to work collaboratively with online tools and the telephone and Skype. Skype is great. Skype and Basecamp and email, we're really excited. Sean we were talking about what we were going to talk about today. And one concept that came up is, This is big news of Apple adopting this augmented reality engine and giving developers these tools. Is it super practical to hold your phone up and play a video game that, sits on your table so you're seeing in real life? No, but it is a bridge to everyone in the world getting used to augmented reality in a new way. So this is what's going to happen in the next couple of years. We'll start having consumer wearable devices. So the things are happening around us until the point when maybe in 5 or 10 years, their glasses not much bigger than mine, and we don't have screens anymore. We have a brick in our pocket that's just processing all the information to computer, but there's no screen on it. Laptops, same thing. Televisions, the same thing. We could just have our glasses on and hit a few buttons and boom, there's a TV right in front of us. The fundamentals of those technologies exist today. So where they'll be in 10 or 12 years, it's going to be interesting, but we may not have screens anymore. I think that's going to change. So we're in a wonderful time of transition and bridging into these new technologies. The internet, smartphones, virtual and augmented reality. It's the next evolution and the next thing.
A lot of these things are amazing. There are a lot of amazing technologies out there, but especially things that change people's behavior. It takes a groundswell to get to that point where you can get mass behavior change. Twitter is an example, right? Who talked like Twitter, but sort of by definition, enough people had to start being okay with talking like Twitter. Then all of a sudden it catches fire and it goes kind of over that tip and goes big. And that sometimes is as much the impetus for the success of a technology as anything, which is half marketing, half quality of the technology.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And we really haven't even talked about artificial intelligence.
Yes, that was the question I had. Where does VR meet AI and what does that look like?
We're still trying to figure it out. It's something that we're huge fans of, study every day, read and absorb as much as we can. Our guess is probably by this time next year, we'll have some element of AI in some software development project or app or something that we're making. The tools for people like us to employ AI is becoming easier. So as developers adopt it, people will adopt it. But again, the core fundamentals are here. There's an interesting story. We think about AI and what it's going to replace. And, the easy things are drivers and, service industry jobs. Well, there's some stories out there, and forgive me if I don't get them 100% right, but Watson, the IBM computer, solved a problem that would have taken 2 million man-hours to get an answer on. They made a book of haikus that was a mix between AI written and human written poems. And people couldn't tell the difference. Music industry people said, well, I'm safe. I'm always going to have a job. AI is never going to affect me. And AI is producing brilliant compositions that, again, there's no way that a computer did this. And, yeah, they did. It's rich in sound and complex in melody.
It really taps into the patterns. There are people who are in the music industry that write songs. They know the patterns. This, crescendo, this, repeat that. And
AI is doing it. There's actually AI writing more AI code. We're not safe, man.
Is that a double entendre?
We always, right. We always thought that, we're developers, we're writing code. That's not going to be taken over by artificial intelligence. Well, it might.
Politicians talk about it. There's a big groundswell now about I forget what the name of it is, but basically just giving people $3,000 a month because there's no work for them. And the more we're going to at some point have less jobs than people because technology is going to do the work. And, it doesn't mean there's less money. There's an element baked into sort of our society that there will always be work available and that you should work. And that a lot of political debates happen around whether people who don't work should be taken care of or not and the unfairness around that. But you're looking around the corner 100 years from now, it may be very possible that robots and AI does so much that literally, as the population increases, there literally just aren't enough jobs that humans need to do. And so rethinking the idea of just giving a certain amount of money to people every month that's generated by the economy.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. That's for sure. I can see it, but you just never know. Someone still has to maintain them, and I really don't know where it's going to go, but we'll be there along the way, monitoring it, using it, employing it, experiencing it, and evangelizing it for sure. Hopefully.
Yeah, you mentioned Elon Musk. He has some concerns. He has some ideas about AI, and sometimes he seems like he wants to put the brakes on that a little bit. Not that that'll ever happen, but he's a pretty forward-thinking guy, and so he's worth listening to because he's so progressive and so forward-thinking in so many areas. To have concerns in this area, which seem counterintuitive to his general vibe. So hey, it makes me want to pay attention.
We pretty much listen to everything that he says and adopt most of his word. I just have fun with the guy's Twitter feed. He just has really smart ideas. Just fun new technology things that don't exist, and crazy idea after crazy idea. Have you seen the thing about his tunnels?
No.
He wants to put tunnels deep under Los Angeles, and your self-driving car will lower and then
through the
tunnels and alleviate traffic and time, and then you pop back up on an elevator to the top. I don't know if it's a TED Talk or an interview, but I think it's a TED Talk.
Isn't that just a subway?
It's the next Jenny, I guess. It's a underground highway.
Right. So what's the viability of being underground in Los Angeles?
Well, there's nowhere else to go.
Sure. But I mean, from a bedrock stability standpoint.
I guess that was all okay. I don't know. The cool animation that he had made it look okay.
As long as the cartoon says it's safe, I believe it.
Exactly.
Well, I've got a few minutes left. I'd like to transition into talking about St. Petersburg. I feel like you're pretty ingrained in the community. I see you out and about a lot. Been here a while. Family here, support a lot of things. Let's start by talking about your feelings on St. Pete's evolution, its renaissance, whatever you want to call it, over the last 10 years.
It's been so great. I moved here when I was 20 years old in 1990. The first job I had was at the St. Pete Times while I finished up a lowly AA degree at St. Pete College, and then was lucky enough and fortunate enough to get a job at a company called Templeton that had these things called mutual funds right over here on Central Avenue. Didn't know what a mutual fund was the day before I started.
Franklin Templeton?
Yeah, it was Templeton, yeah. John and Rosemary Galbraith, one of the founders of the company that have lived in St. Petersburg and have been incredibly philanthropic along the way. They no longer live here, but I was hired and interviewed by Rosemary Galbraith in October of 1991, and shortly after that they merged with Franklin Mutual Funds to become Franklin Templeton. In the time that I was there, we went from 300 employees to 3,000 employees.
So you were there for the merger?
I sure was. I was there throughout the entire evolution, and then into arguably the greatest economic period we've had in our country's history at a mutual fund company in the financial industry. I actually started in customer service and moved up into sales, and my job was in the late 90s going to factories and plants all over the country and explaining to a worker what a 401k was. Yeah, so I gave the first talks on 401ks and explained to people why they should have them and what an important thing looking back now. And at the time, it was just a drag to go to Meridian, Mississippi and Chunky, Alabama.
Chunky, Alabama.
There's a Chunky, Alabama. And Meridian, Mississippi is where they make Peavey guitars and Peavey amps and Peavey drums. I got to meet Harlan Peavey, who is basically a cousin of Les Paul. So it was incredible. Yeah. And then they made the mistake of telling them I play drums, and they put me in this drum room in this 64-piece crazy Neil Peart drum set, and all sat with their hands folded and waited for me to play it. Like, I'm sorry, I'm the Karate Kid of drums. I know 4 things well. But getting back to St. Petersburg, so I started at a company that's 2 wonderful companies that are really drenched and been a part of the St. Petersburg culture for a very, very, very long time. And I live 30 blocks away from downtown right now. It's the farthest from downtown I've lived in the 26 years that I've been here. So I've been going to the Emerald Bar and the Yacht Club and the Museum of Fine Arts and places like that.
I see what you did there. You started out with the Emerald one. Oh, wait, and the Yacht Club and the museum, not just the Emerald. I mean, 5 days a week, but I did go to the Yacht Club once.
God bless the Emerald. That's what my t-shirt would say. So it's been fantastic. All the development, all the building, are the arts, are the culture. I'm not sure what came first, the art, the culture, or the money, but I've been able to see all 3 of them align with each other. And it's just so great. I did Leadership St. Pete 12 years ago. I sat on their board for 7 years after that. I advise a wonderful nonprofit called Creative Clay that teaches art to adults with developmental disabilities, a horribly underserved population. Have done that, sat on the board for a while, the executive committee, and now I advise them as well. And watched the Morian Arts Center be built right across the street when I was at Franklin Templeton. I watched those columns come in. I saw that funny shape and like literally watched the cranes one day from my office. So to see the Morian celebrate its 100th year as an art gallery is another fantastic thing. So I'm the youngest of four, the only one in my family that doesn't live in the same town that we were born in. And this is my roots. I certainly believe that family is first, but in the same vein, my roots and my family are here in St. Petersburg. And I'll be a lucky person if I spend the rest of my life here and raise my daughter here.
Right. So what are your thoughts on the pier? Let me be more specific, not the new design, not that sort of thing. What place has that area played in St. Pete's history, and what role do you think it should or will play in the St. Pete's future?
It's funny you asked me about the pier. The pier has been my client at different agencies that I've worked in. We've been the agency of record from 2001 till the day that it shut its doors. Worked with the city, worked with the folks at the pier, and I started attending public meetings about the new pier in 2008. I don't think there's anyone in St. Petersburg that's not an architect, a city employee that actually is intimate with the project as I was able to be. Basically, I've forgotten more than most people know about the pier and where it started and where it went. I think we should have a pier. I think we missed the mark and we made a mistake by not making the lens. I really do. It'd be there right now, and it would be huge and beautiful. Some of the critics, I just didn't really see that eye to eye with. And any building you build is going to need maintenance. And the type of material and those things were guesses at the time. I believe that the right decisions would have been made and it would have been a long-lasting thing. Man, we could do a whole show on the pier. We really could. So I was really disappointed that that project got voted down by my community. I felt like my community let itself down. I was really saddened and shocked that that happened. It would be here.
Well, one of the other interesting points, I was talking with someone yesterday about the pier, actually another show, and the new design lacks the large, iconic, you think of things like the St. Louis Arch, for example. It is what it is. It's a piece of art, but it's something that people come and take pictures of, and it defines the city. But yet you can still go up in it. You can still have events around it. It doesn't preclude you from having that sort of community availability and vibe. You look at the Space Needle, maybe not so much as far as the events around it or community vibe, but it's a thing. You can still go up and use it. There's still use to the community. A little bit different landscape in Seattle, but are we losing out by not having that one thing that can be photographed and be associated with the city as an icon?
Well, the people voted it down. I mean, we were going to have that with the lens. It was going to be this iconic, big, beautiful, giant thing, and it got voted down. So the design that we have today, you either have form or function. Although tourists aren't going to come and take pictures of it, I'm going to take my kid there a lot. We're going to spend a lot of time there. People in Seattle don't go to the Needle. Who are we building it for? Are we building it for tourists or are we building it for our people?
Or can we serve both?
I thought the lens did it, but I'm excited about this. And there's a million little reasons why there isn't restaurants and shopping out over the water. There's a bunch of them. When you have that type of stuff, you have to have different kinds of pilings, and you have to have fire, sewer, water. You have to have the ability for an ambulance and a fire truck to get down there to put out a fire. Again, I know this because I went to public meetings for 5 years on this subject. So when they took all that off the water, it was by design that they just said, oh, we don't want to do that. We don't want to have boats just dock up to restaurants. We would, but it wasn't in the budget. It was $50 million and it had to have a subsidy of much less to operate and run it. It was $500,000 a year to run the pier. That was taxpayer money. That was going away because the restaurants and all that stuff and the retail was going away. And quite frankly, it should be on Beach Drive. Go to a restaurant and eat and look at the pier. Go out over the water and fish and boat and kayak and walk and maybe listen to concerts. So the new Pier Park solves all those. That's something that I'll want to go to.
So you were disappointed about the lens, but you also embrace what's coming as well and look forward to it.
Yeah, I get it. It's not going to be as cool looking. I mean, it could be. Maybe it is. But I'm certainly going to have a lot of fun at it. There's going to be a lot of stuff to do. It's going to be beautiful views. It's not going to look great from a helicopter. But the good thing is I'm not in a helicopter that much. So it doesn't matter. I'm going to be on the ground.
Ever since they took the helipad off the top of the Emerald, you stopped flying, right?
Exactly. I think it's going to be something that family use every day. And I would rather have something for the people than something for the people who visit the people. We need tourism, definitely, but that's why we have hotels and restaurants and museums. I'm happy that it's for the people, and I'm behind it. It's definitely better than nothing. We got a call from the city about, can we make an animated movie? We got to sell this to the people. Those things are expensive. And unfortunately, it wasn't in the budget to do a big fancy animation like that. I wish there was. Can you imagine if I could make a virtual reality experience of the pier and you could walk through it and you could really look at it? I think a lot of people would be a lot more behind it if we could immerse them in it now and show it to them. But, it's just so far, it's just not to be. But I love what I've seen, and I hope they start building. They're tearing everything out now.
Yeah, it looks like it's moving. Some news about the recent permits and stuff.
I'm for it, for sure.
All right, last thing. We're getting down to it. I want you to give someone a shout out. This is a segment that I like to do, and I'm going to preclude you from using Creative Clay since we've talked about them a lot. So tell me someone, or it can be an entity, but a person's nice as well. I think sometimes entities are a little easier and people get left out of that. In St. Pete, who's doing something neat, who's doing something worthy, that's helping you lift up St. Pete, or just something that's impressed you and you think they would benefit from having a few more eyeballs on what they're doing or a little attention and appreciation thrown their way.
That's a really easy one for me. I want to give a shout out to the Pointer Institute. If you don't know who the Pointer Institute are, they are the entity that not only runs and operates the St. Pete Times, but they serve the entire journalistic community across the whole globe. What does that mean? What do they really do? Well, my shout out is to a fine gentleman by the name of Al Tompkins. What Al does is Al is actually hired by every major news organization in the world, CNN, CBC in Toronto, and Al Jazeera, and ABC, NBC. And what he does is he teaches modern storytelling for journalists. His students in class are veteran writers, producers, and camera people. And it comes right out of here from St. Petersburg and makes an impression all over the world. In these days when there's so much thought and energy on what is news, the people at Pointer are really trying to always police that and answer the question. As soon as I got VR goggles and VR movies, I went straight to Al Tompkins. And literally, while I was showing him virtual reality, he's like, look, Tom Brokaw's on the phone, and it says NBC News. And the reason why they had called Al is because in the newsroom, they couldn't come to a consensus about how they were going to use a story. So Al was the deciding vote on what word they were going to use. So I don't know the specifics. He wasn't able to tell me, but Tom Brokaw called him to get his advice on what is the best way to tell the truth. Telling the truth is what the mission of the Pointer Institute is. And I know a lot of people know who they are. I don't know if a lot of people know what they do. It's so incredibly impressive and exciting to know that it's coming from here. And Al lives 2 miles from my house when he's home. Most of the time he's at these places teaching journalists and trying to always be honest and tell the truth, which is so hard these days. So my shout outs to the Pointer Institute and to Al Tompkins. You make the world a better place, and you do it here from St. Petersburg.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, Kevin Hohl, HD Interactive, been a pleasure. And might take you up on that offer to come back in and talk peer for an hour.
Oh my gosh, I'd love to. Thank you. This is among the fastest hour of my life. So it was fantastic. Great job. I was super comfortable, and I'd be back anytime.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You made it to the end of another great episode. For show notes, head to stpete.co to the show notes page, which includes links to all the resources mentioned in the show, as well as quotes and key insights from the show and information about the guest and the host. Thanks again to our sponsor, Big C. Head to Big C, that's BIGSEA.co to check out their work. And if you like what you heard, make sure to share this episode on social media and leave a comment. See you next time.